This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Ranga.
sir, so can you build a Docker image locally, push it to the Docker hub, and can you show that process? Because like I was getting some errors with that.
Okay, sure, Ranga. So Docker, creating the image,
And pushing it to the Docker hub.
create and push to hub. So this process you just want to go over once, right?
Yeah, so actually I went through that, it built, but while pushing it was giving some issues with that.
So what is the error it was giving? Permission denied or something?
Yeah, permission denied, yes, yes.
Okay, so you have to follow two more steps, Ranga, for that. In order
Okay.
to push to Docker Hub, you have to do two things. One, create a repo on Docker Hub. Create a repo on Docker Hub. I'll show you the process also so that next time you can repeat it. And second is you have to do Docker login on command prompt. Otherwise, it won't know that you are pushing to your Docker Hub repo.
Yeah.
Make sense? Yeah. So we will
Yeah,
see
yes, sir.
that. We will, in fact,
Yes.
we will try that process. So let me just see. So today, actually, I just want to cover one more thing from scratch so that people get an idea. So this is, if you see, this is an online template that I found. And ideally, this is full-fledged front end because for front end is not going to be our focus. Focus is going to be backend REST API. So if we want to have a authentication service, imagine like backend, we want to have REST APIs which support login and logout functionality, right? So here, if you see, this is just a front end template. Uh, Ideally, right now, it is not honoring anything. I can give anything and say login. It's a static template right now. So it is logging me in, and this has a nice UI, which if you see, it is showing me various colors and all. So what we will do is, in fact, we will create a Docker image for this. We will push so that people can get started from there. Right. So we will use this. So this template will help you get the next exercise started, and people can have step-by-step view of creating a Docker image as well as creating a fresh project. Right. Okay, so let's begin with Syed's question first. So Syed, the question was about browsers design. So ideally,
Yes.
you, as you mentioned rightly, the browser's purpose is you just request for a page and it gets that shown to you. This is the main purpose of the browser, right?
Yeah.
So what you are talking about is just browser displaying something. Whatever I see here, that is the part that is covered by HTML. Anything
Yes.
else do you, so I will call it, let's say HTML rendering. This is what the browser is doing. Can you try to add little more to it? What else is browser capable of doing? And
JavaScript
specifically, we are
meant for
talking
all
about
the videos and all those
awesome.
things. We will use JavaScript.
So it will have a JavaScript engine because whenever we click, the JavaScript runs and browser is able to run that JavaScript. Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah, others also can participate. Mahesh, Ranga, please throw some light. Whatever you see, like browser does little more than this. So whatever you see, just add to it.
It has a CSS engine, CSS
Yes.
processing engine.
Yes, it will have CSS processing engine. Yes.
So it has all these tabs functionality, so it maintains all the individual tabs separately and all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can say, let's say UI manager for tabs. So it has its own UI, it allows you to do multiple things.
Then dev tools as well. So.
Yeah, it has development tools. So Sayed, you have used these things, development tools?
Not extensively, but
But you are aware of
yeah,
developer
yeah,
tools.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when we go and inspect, ideally, if
Yeah.
you see, it shows a lot of things over here on network, whatever data is coming. This is something we
Yes.
talked about in the class also. So okay, it has dev tools. What else? So these days, browsers are little more than browsers. In fact, Google envisioned browser to be the OS. They actually started a project called Chromium OS. And in fact, their browser is having a lot more functionality. So Google created their Chromebooks like laptops. Their OS is the browser. So they say like, since all the data stays in the cloud, in Google Drive, all your files are there. In YouTube, all your videos are there. In Facebook, all your posts are there. Gmail, all your mails are there. So why do you need anything to be stored locally? Okay, now if I say one functionality, there is one functionality of browser that all of us use. If you are a Chrome user, you must be using that functionality. That is related to login that we do. I'm logged in here. There is a little benefit I get when I'm logged in here. Can you correlate to what features browser provides?
Yeah, it does history tracking, cookies, all like everything.
Awesome.
Like
History tracking, yes. Favorites management, right? Then can I say it also remembers my password? Yeah. Do we use that feature? Browser remembers the password, so we don't even have to remember our passwords.
Yeah.
Right. And we also talked about for
bookmark,
apps, it provides. Yeah. Go ahead, Ranga.
bookmark management, sir.
Yeah, bookmark management. So ideally bookmark and favorite, I'm writing both. Because some people call it favorites, some call it bookmarks. Now, apart from this, if you see it talks to the backend server, so can I say it has some sort of network management? It makes HTTP calls to the server, gets the response back. So this is like the backend part that it does. It will have some sort of security manager. So whatever password we store, whatever password management it does, those passwords are not revealed to anyone, just like that. So browser remembers those passwords, and without kind of a user authentication, you cannot see his passwords. Then it supports plugins also, extensions or plugins. So if I say here Chrome extensions, so I can see, okay, not this. Okay, Chrome spelling was wrong for me. Chrome extensions. So ideally, if you see, all these are extensions, browser extensions or plugins that I'm using. Right. So say a goal of this exercise was, if we see all these functionalities for a browser, we will see like in browser, there have to be components that take care of individual functionalities. So it is like, what is your view of a browser? Like how broad you can see a
Okay.
browser, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from this also, browser does a lot of things. This is just a kind of partial view of whatever we have talked about. There will be a settings manager also, like browser knows my settings in the sense, if I say Chrome settings, yeah, so here all my settings, what appearance do I want, I can configure, I can customize my browser. That is one more thing. Then what happens when we download any file? So do you see this, there is a download manager also in the browser, right? So
Yeah.
it tells what I downloaded, when I downloaded. So we can also say like there is a download manager built in. Then you can say browser update manager also. So whenever a new version of Chrome is released, it auto updates. So ideally I can go to Chrome. I can say, I think somewhere in the settings it should have that, go and update about Google Chrome. Yeah, so it is up to date. Ideally it searches for updates also. So whenever a new update comes, it will go and update it. So yeah, so this is something that we can see right now. Now, if you know That browser does all these things. You can ideally come up with a very detailed high-level design. I mean, high-level design is nothing but various components. Each component has a specific purpose of it, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And
Sandeep, I have
do you
here.
also know? Yeah, Mahesh, go ahead.
What do you generally mean by a component?
So, okay, component, it is like a significant piece of a software which you can say, hey, this particular piece accomplishes this functionality. That is what we will say as component.
How does it differ from
Component
library?
is significant piece in entire project that has certain fixed responsibilities in overall big picture. Yeah, so you were saying something about library, Mahesh?
How does it differentiate? How is it different from library?
Got it. So component can be logical also, not essentially physical. Library, when you say library is, you can say it's a self-contained piece of code, may contain more than one files. Right. So the way we will differentiate between library is, so ideally, if you look at a website, Mahesh, I will say when you do authentication in a site, login, log out, register. So I can also say that authentication is a component. The purpose of this component is to allow user registration, login, and you can say log out. It's a logical entity right now. So in a big picture diagram, we will say, hey, this particular box that we have drawn, this takes care of authentication. So this is my authentication component. Internally, it can be using multiple libraries. So library is a piece of software. This box is a logical entity that helps us visualize our overall solution together.
Okay.
Does that make
So,
sense, Mahesh?
yeah, makes sense, Sandeep.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes while discussion, right, we have a UI component or web component. So,
Yeah.
some light on that.
Sorry, go on.
So in short, what Sandeep is saying is that every functionality is something like a component that needs to be has its own piece of working software, right? That's what it is. Okay.
Sandeep, what I was asking is, we say UI component or web component, right? Hello, you're able to hear me, Sandeep? Hello.
That's right. Correct.
Are you able to hear me, Sandeep? I'm not able to hear.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you, Mahesh.
UI component, web component, software component. So software component, I mean, you said authentication manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, component is a part of your entire project. I mean, some part in that entire project which is responsible for doing some operation. You can use the term module or you can use component. So this is what we are referring to.
I was coming
It
to
is
that.
a
So one
logical,
component is similar,
yeah, you can say component and module are similar things for
or
us.
module contains multiple components.
Yeah, it's again like this is a terminology. See, component is a very generic term where you say like this is a small piece in my bigger project. So the way you use terminology, I say like people use this terminology. I have a project. Project has modules. Each module has components. This is terminology some people use. Some people use a terminology. I have a solution. Solution can have multiple projects. Each project can have module, or people call the, rather than the people call it as various libraries they can have. Right.
Okay,
So
got it,
as
Sandeep.
far as HLD is concerned, as far as HLD is concerned, we say that each significant piece should have a rectangular box for it. That is what we are calling, we are calling component. We are for it, right? Because in HLD, we will just talk about the boxes in our entire project. We use two terminologies, project and components. Make sense, Mahesh?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, so ideally, if you look at this, there is a piece drawn here. We will call this as high level design. So this link is there in our tracker also. So our tracker that we have here, in our tracker, there is a for important links. So I'll just go there. Yeah, so there was some disturbance coming from your side. So for now, I have muted you. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, so here if you see, there is an important links. This is a very good resource that I'm opening. For system design, this is a very good reference, the first link. This is the link I have opened. So here if you see, there is some diagram that is drawn here. So I will say this is a high level design. There is a client box. Now this client can be your one library, more libraries. So in our case, our client remains either jQuery or Angular or React. We'll call that is our client. And that client hits load balancer. Load balancer, here you see there are multiple boxes drawn. So keep in mind whenever there are multiple boxes, it means load balancer is not running on one machine. It is running in HA mode. Same way web server, 2-3 boxes. It's not running on single machine. There are multiple boxes. Then there is a write API, read API, write API, a sync API. One is sync API synchronized. Whenever you call, it waits for the response. A sync is it queues somewhere. Somebody picks up from the queue and they update the databases. So read API reads from the databases. So ideally, this diagram, if you see in this diagram, all the rectangular boxes that we see in HLD, we will simply say, hey, these are components of our project. So this is just abstract view of our project, that all these pieces are involved. Now, it is not essential that we have implemented every component. So CDN is something we are leveraging from online world. DNS is something we are using, but in our entire project, there is a component for that. There is a box for that. It helps us visualize the flow. And same way, in this resource, you will find multiple diagrams given like this. There is a lot of terminology provided to you. So this is another diagram. Okay, this is a study guide. So there are a lot of assignments also they have given here. Eventually we will get there. We will start learning that. So it says designmint.com, design social network, design pastebin. This is the short URL shortener that we talked about. So if I go and look at their solution, for that he's talking about this is the design he will use. So this is high level design. And if you see outline high level with all important components. So important components are again logical entities that we want to see. So he's saying for analytics, I'll have a component. So Mahesh, hope now this terminology of component that we are using will make more sense to you. It is not related to code.
Yes, Sandeep, I understood.
Perfect. But good that you asked so that we are clear about what terminology we are using.
Yeah. Also, Sandeep, the latency
Yeah.
and throughput, I also want to understand about this latency, throughput, and telemetry.
Mhm. Yeah, we will go over all these terms in our usual class. For now, latency,
Okay, okay,
just keep
fine,
in
okay.
mind, latency is the delay that is there in the call. So if anything takes time, we say latency is more. So when you make a call, you wait for the time. So we will discuss all those terms
Okay.
when we talk about performance of our calls. Okay. So Sayed, I guess your question got answered. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know.
Whatever you have mentioned is about the various functionalities a browser is just having, right? But when you write a draw a high level diagram, so it means that
Correct.
I'm just trying to understand how do you draw the high level diagram for all this functionality, right? When suppose when an interviewer asks, it's okay, get me the high level diagram for Chrome. So I should choose any of the three functionalities or one or two functionalities and just draw a diagram, right? That's what is expectation.
No, whatever you can think of, I will say, like, for all functionalities, you should have them incorporated in your diagram. So in order to answer your question quickly, let me go here. Yeah. And it's not a very formal diagram. Ideally, if you see, my answer to your question would be this. So this is, I'm saying this is high level diagram for the Chrome browser here. Ideally, if you see, there is a user here, and all these components are the component that user interacts with. URL processing, say we are typing URL. So in browser, there should be some component which is taking the URL and doing some processing with that. So ideally, if you see, if I go here and say Google company, when I do this, I have just typed this, hit enter. Now it eventually goes and makes this a URL. Sometimes I give URLs which have spaces. So google.com/test space ABC. So test space has been replaced with %20. So this is URL processing. UI renderer, UI event manager when we are clicking something, settings manager because as a user we directly interact, history manager, favorites, extension manager, dev tools. So these are something we directly interact with. Internally, UI renderer will go and work with CSS engine, JS engine. HTML will go and work with DOM parser. Network communication module is something that talks to the server in the backend. Cache is something that browser will have its own cache. So ideally, if you see this diagram is nothing, there are some arrows also linked. And what I have done is I have brought the third parties also into the picture. Server is there in the picture where browser talks to the end party server. I could have put a DNS also here. There is user it interacts with, there is operating system it interacts with. So when we have put it like this is kind of showing you a kind of detailed diagram.
Okay.
Right.
So basically, I mean, my thought was that I was trying to. So basically, your question was about how the various functionalities in a browser interacts with each and every component. So I think my understanding, what I thought was how it hits the server and comes back. That there was a gap in understanding. Okay, that's clear now.
Yeah. So ideally, like, take this question in this way, that if we say forget about whatever browsers we have, let's say we want to implement a totally new browser. So what will be your thought? What all should be the key components that our browser should have if you are thinking like an architect, not as an end user?
Okay.
Right. So what all functionality you will provide so that your browser is at par with browsers that are there in the market that people are using.
Okay.
So that way you will think, okay, user facing things, components are these. Then in backend we have some other things that we require, and some network module library that we'll talk here. So this is the way, the questions that we are sharing. So ideally, how will you implement your own software? What will be the key component you will think of? That's how you should treat high level design questions.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and this is something that I am going to share tomorrow. So yeah, since you asked, I just opened that right away. Right. Okay, so this is your question. So Mahesh, your question got answered, or you have any further questions?
That's it.
Okay, so there are a few more folks who joined. So guys, we are just going over the questions people are asking. So Sayed had a question about design. What is the expectation on the question of the day? Mahesh had a question on what is the term component that we use, and he asked me to just fix one link in the mentor pick. Solid design link is not working. And Ranga has a question. He says, like, how do you create Docker image and push to Docker Hub? He was trying to create an image of his own and he faced some issues. And I said like 2-step process we have to follow. We have to create a repo on Docker Hub, and then we have to first log in through command prompt. Only then we will be able to push our image. So Prashant, Rishabh, you have any questions to ask or?
No, Sandeep, no questions from my side. No.
Okay.
Not from
Sure.
me.
Then okay, no worries. Then we will go with the flow. And in case you feel there are any questions from your side, let me know.
Okay.
Prashant, how about you?
I don't have any questions, Sandeep, at the moment, but I'll ask you if something comes to my
Sure,
mind.
sure.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead with Ranga's question then. So his question is like, how do I create an image and push to the hub? So what I am going to do, that is part of your next assignment also. I'm going here and I'll create, let's say, in fact, I'll create a Git repo so that you can also use that. I'll go to GitHub. I'll just go and say a new repo, and let's call it as site with, okay, REST auth service assignment. So this is a repo I'm creating with just a readme file, create repo. So this will also give you a fair idea of how we work on the projects or how we create Node.js projects from scratch. Yeah, so I'll go here and I'll say git clone. I'm just putting my repos link. So let me get my repo link. Okay, not working. So I'll right click, edit, paste. Oh no. Yeah. Okay, so we got one repo here. So I go inside this REST auth. Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll create a project for my Node.js. So I'll say npm init. This is the way we create a project. And I'll go and hit enters for everything. So I have just accepted all the defaults. Now I'll go and say that code, I use Visual Studio Code. So if I do code dot, it opens current folder in Visual Studio Code. And what I'll do is I'll create a server or index.js file. Here we have named our file as index.js. That is what default was saying. Most of the times I prefer naming it server.js so that we can be clear that it is server file for us. So I just name it server.js. So this file is like our normal Node.js file, hello node. And one more thing to add here is Node.js is nothing but whatever JavaScript engine Chrome has. So in Chrome, there is some engine that processes all the JavaScript. What people did at Google, they kind of took that JS engine out and they made it Node.js. So this JS engine, which is running independently, this actually became Node.js. So a module or component coming out from Chrome and becoming a total environment to run. So that was the beginning of Node.js. Okay, so we have this project.
One question.
Yeah.
This
Sure, sir.
specific is Node.js, right? So it's a front-end MVC application. I mean, I'm just trying to understand what is the primary purpose of this Node.js.
Okay, so primary purpose of Node.js was like, this is an engine which can run JavaScript. So what people said is in web, people are anyways using JavaScript on front end side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they said it would have been good if backend could also be coded in JavaScript so that you become like, you just learn JS, you know, both front end and back end, and the term we use is full stack developer. So you can do backend development also and front end also. So full stack developer. So in Node.js, what they did JavaScript plus added additional modules for backend development, or you can say for any app development. Ideally, in Node.js, you can develop apps which are not essentially web applications, any other apps. Networked apps, mainly, like that was the goal. Networked apps. You can write a network server in Node.js. Other clients can connect to it. That was the goal.
Okay.
Right. So this express that we use, Express.js that we use. This is like one of the node module that we use to create web applications, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what was that site? So that site was Bootstrap admin template. So I'm just going and downloading. Yeah, there is one template available online, which is free. I can simply go and say free download. So this is getting downloaded. So ideally, if you see, this is a full-fledged front-end site. It doesn't have any functionality, doesn't have any backend. So this is a free code available. So we are just downloading that so that we can build the authentication service for this. So this is a zip that I have downloaded. So let me go ahead and say extract it. Yeah, so we'll extract it here. So once this is extracted, what I'll do, I'll just figure out what the home page for this thing is. So I'll go here, Control V, and let me open this. So this has entire project. So I'll just copy this. I've just copied the entire folder and I just want to put it in my Git project. So our project was created in this directory. So I'll say start dot. In this directory, I'm bringing that downloaded project and say paste. So it's just a simple net theme that I downloaded and I'm just putting over here. So it says, okay, 2 files are there that need to be replaced. It is not showing the name. For now, I'll skip these files. Right. So we have just copied these files. And now in this project structure, if I look at, there is an index file. If I double click index, I see, okay, this is the main file that this project has. And if I say logout, it will automatically take us to the login page. Okay, so I understand that index file is main file that I want to serve in my Node.js. So what I'll do, I'll change my server.js project. I'm just removing this code and I'll go and get express hello world. This is what I did last time also when we created a project. So express.js we need. Express.js is a web server module. So I'm just copying this hello world code from here to here. And we want to serve this file index.html file. This is the file we want to serve to the front end whenever somebody makes a call to browser. So right now, if we make a call to browser for 3000, I'll go and run. Okay, first thing I have to do, when I'm using Express, I have to do npm install express -- save. So I need to download Express in order to use Express. Otherwise, Express is not something that is bundled with Node.js. Express we every time have to download from online. And the moment we run this command, npm install express, this creates an entry in our project file. And that entry that gets added is our dependencies got created. So this is a dependency that got created in package.json file that you are dependent on Express. Okay. So we got this. Now if I go and run node server.js, this is going to run on 3000. It will just say hello world. So right now we have done just copy paste hello world. Now we want to serve our file. We don't want to serve this hello world. So this function I want to change to send my index.js file. So can you tell me like what line should I write so that we can send index.html file? What changes should I make here? Does anyone remember we discussed in the first class?
Res.send file.
Yeah, it should be send file. So send file function knows that I have to send a file. And here we have to give the full path of the file. So how do we give the full path? __ dir name is for current directory. In current directory, we have index.html. So this is the full path. So notes wise, so that it remains here. So first thing that we do is we create a Node.js project. This is for current directory in Node.js. This constant we use for that. Then res.send file is a function in Node.js. express for sending a file. And there are three functions to be aware of. Rest.send, it is to send a string. Then there is a rest.json to send JSON. These are the three functions that we typically use. Send JSON object. Right, so send we already saw. That send function was pre-built. We removed that. We said send file, and we are just sending the index.html file. Now if I go here, stop my project and say node server.js. Now if I go to localhost 3000, I'll see that file is being served. But can you tell what is wrong with this file? Why it is not coming properly?
Only index file is sent, like CSS and JS are not sent.
Yeah, CSS and JS are not being served. So if I go to inspect, I can easily figure out what is wrong in this. So I see 12 errors, 1 warning. If I go to network tab, I'll just refresh it. And if you see all these red things that are showing, it is saying hey, script file not able to serve. CSS file not able to serve. So these files are not coming. In Express, we have to do one specific thing to send the static files. And what we have to do for sending those static files is we will search again in Express side that we want to send static files. So I'll say here static files. In Express, if we want to serve static file, we have to make some setting. We have to tell Express if somebody comes and asks for a CSS image file, which folder it should look into, which folder it should search. So here, this is a line. This one line is telling to Express that those files are in public folder. So I just get that here to my project. Before making any routes, get post routes, I will just put this line. So this line is saying, if any request comes for, let's say, CSS file, then we are telling Express, hey Express, in current directory public folder, CSS folder will have that file. So this is part of request. You have to, this is your search. Now in place of public folder, I can give my own folder name. It is not necessary we have to choose public. So I can give any name. Now what I will do in my project, I'll try to make a structure. I will say all static files, I'll move them into public folder. So public folder, I'll move JS files. Public folder, I'll move CSS, vendor, image. All these files, I'm just moving to public folder. So if you see, now public folder has all our static files. Now if browser comes and asks for CSS or something in HTML, path will be embedded with CSS / something. So if I show you the index file, so index.js file, yeah, let's go there, login.html or index.html. It is just referencing CSS by this path. So it is starting a relative path CSS sbadmin to min.css. So now since I have put them in a public folder, public CSS folder, Express will understand this path as public / CSS / this, and this should be working fine. So I'll go and stop my project once again, start running it, go back to the tab where I was requesting for page, just refresh it. Now we see all the CSS JS files are being served properly. So if I go to network tab, refresh, I see there's no error I'm noticing here. Top right, I just see a warning, which we can ignore. For now, some gross origin warning, but warnings we don't care right now. So ideally, if you see, I've got a kind of online downloaded file up and running for me, right? One more structure change we can do typically, since we will have a backend and front end both. I will go and make one more change. We will put all our HTML files also inside public, and I'll create a folder for that. Typically, I call that folder as views because they are our user interfaces, or you can call it UI. I use that convention. So I'll copy all these HTML files, cut them, go to public, go to views, put them here. Again, go to this. This is just I'm creating my own structure for my project. Login index. So all our files cut and go to public, go to views, because all this stuff that we are putting, this is a public facing stuff. This is something that any user will be able to see. So now if I have changed this, I have to change in my server.js file also. So I have to say now my index file is no more here. It is inside public, inside views, then it comes. So I'll say div name, public, views, and index. So this is where it has gone. So if I don't change this path, then the site will stop working because it will not be able to find that page. So node server.js. Now I go and refresh it and I see my site is still working. Now one question I will pose to you guys, if I go to here other pages, if I click login page, if I click here, it will not work. You see, it is saying cannot find /login.html. Can you tell what is wrong here? Why it is not working? Anyone?
We have declared route for only slash index, like the native route, like other routes are not declared yet.
Awesome, Ranga. Yeah. So for index, we have put a route here. I have not put it for others, so I can go and do the same thing. I can say I defined login route, and it should serve the login page. I can go and define register route. It should serve the register page. Now I can keep on adding pages, routes like this. I can also say app.get, and I can say API route, API hello, and I can say request response and define a function. res.json, I'll say JSON is nothing but a key value pair inside curly brackets. So we say message hello. So we have kind of created an API route also. These are UI routes. This is an API route. Yeah. Now if I go and stop it and run it, one more thing I have to do is I have to go to index.js, index.html page. Wherever it was calling login.html, this href I will change. Rather than putting HTML, I'll say just call login, because /login is the link now. Whenever /login is clicked, it will go to server, it will come to this route, and this knows that I have to send the login page back. So let's go back, node server.js, and now if I go here, go back, refresh this page, go to pages, login, at down if you see here that it is showing that now it is pointing to /login, not login.html anymore. So I'll go here, click this, and now we see we are going to login page also. If I go back, other pages, I still have to define routes. Register, it will not take to. For every page that we have in our site, we will have routes defined so that these links start working. So this is the basic working site that we have that we can work with. Now what we want is, for this also we want our Docker container, Docker image to be created so that without having the code, we can run it with just a Docker image. So that is the question that Ranga was asking, and let's get to the next step. So far here, do you have any questions, guys, about Node.js?
Hey,
So
Sandeep,
Sandeep, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
please.
okay. I just wanted to ask what this API/hello line, what does this mean?
Okay, this is, let's say tomorrow, these routes are serving just the pages, right?
Yes.
If you want to define REST APIs for authentication, somebody wants to send a username and password. He doesn't want a UI from you. What he wants is he wants just a data from you,
Okay.
right? Then when you have to send a data, this is becoming like an API server. If I give you an example, so I go to a JSON placeholder, look at this. The way Facebook shows your post, it can be made a separate API. So this /post is an API. If I go here, if you see, I'm just getting the data. You see that what is the user ID, what is the title, what is the body. Backend is sending just the data, no web page.
Okay.
This is useful for scenarios if you have a mobile application as well as web application. So what your front end can do, mobile can also call this API to get the data, and this data can be shown in mobile app using mobile UI controls, not the web page controls. So most modern designs, the way they work is they will have an API server here, which serves the data. In front of API server, people will have web server, and people will have, let's say, mobile app. This is the client part. This is browser, which shows HTML. So browser will ask for HTML from this page. Once the page comes, this page will make an API call here. Mobiles always make an API call so that they get the data and they can show that in their own way. So this is typically what the design is. We have one server shared here and this. Does this make sense,
Sandeep?
Prashant?
Yeah.
Rishabh, go ahead.
So when I use this API gateway, it will still show the data in a web page only, right?
Not necessarily. API
Okay.
is sending you just the data. Showing in the UI, it's the part that browser plays, the browser does,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Okay. I was confused between like what we were doing, like essentially a login.html or index.html page and the data that we are using from the REST API.
Okay, no, it's not that way. So one more example I'll show you so that it becomes more clearer. So ideally, if you see, there is some code we are writing here. This is my front end code, right? So if you visualize this, this is an HTML page running in the browser, right?
Yes.
Now what this does, this is having a script here, this JavaScript, what it is doing, it is making an HTTP GET call. So you can say this is an API call that front end is making, the browser is making.
Right.
And it is getting all the data from the server and it is putting that in a local variable, my welcome.
Okay.
And this my welcome is shown here. So ideally there is a linking. JavaScript gets the data from the server and UI shows it. So this is the UI element, right? So
Makes
now
sense.
if I say run here, what happened? It is, yeah, this hello Angular JS students, this is coming from the server. This welcome message is actually coming from a server.
Okay.
And if I have to prove you, go to inspect, go to network tab. These API responses show up in XHR tab, right? So if I just refresh or if I say run, so ideally if you see it went and made a call to welcome HTML. I look at this, that this request has got a response from the server. This response is like, in our Express world, if you ask me what is this, this is like a send call. Here earlier we had a send hello world call, right? So this is like server is sending you a message, and that message, something, how UI wants to display is up to UI.
Okay.
I can, rather than putting in H1, I can also put it as an H2 tag. And now if you see, I run and it has become smaller. So rendering part is onto front end.
Okay.
Right. Same way,
So
if I have to show you another example. Yeah, Rishabh, go ahead.
So
not me.
Yes,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
saying, so what I'm seeing is that this is what you said about it as both the front end and back end, the components for Node.js. What you just showed me.
Sorry, your question is not clear to me.
No, you said that Node.js recently, I mean, we have all the front end as well as the back end support, right? So whatever
No,
example
Node.js
you
is
showed.
only backend. So Node.js is only backend side.
Okay.
Front end is JavaScript, which is running
Okay.
inside the browser.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. One more example, if I have to show you, I go to mentor pick. When I do force refresh, what happens? So front end is going to make an API call to the backend, and it will wait for all these classes data to come. Ideally, if you see here, notice here, what is coming from the backend is sending this data. I'll open it in a new tab. Ideally, if you see, backend is sending just the data. Each class, it is saying this is the title, this is the description, this is the title, this is the description. So backend is sending the data, front end takes responsibility of rendering the data and even putting the UI elements. Make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, this one. This one became more clear. Yeah, Sandeep.
Yeah. So and this design is conveying all that. We are having two servers now, web server and API server. Web just sends the static page with JavaScript, and that JavaScript makes the API call and makes front end more dynamic. So web server load has reduced. Front end, all these framework that we call Angular, React, they all know how to make calls to APIs and how to get and process that in the UI.
Okay.
Right. And this
So
is a
why?
design, in fact. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So why mobile doesn't have to make the request to web server?
Because in mobile phone, if you are developing a mobile app,
Oh, mobile
not
app. Okay.
if you are doing a mobile app, not the mobile browser. If it is a mobile browser, that will still go by the same route.
By the
But
web.
if
Okay.
your mobile app doesn't need a web page, it needs the
Doesn't need a
data
web.
so that it has its own elements, right?
So so a mobile app will have its own renderer, how to display the data.
Absolutely. Same way, if you have a desktop app running on Windows, that will also make API call because UI controls will be different now,
Okay. Got it.
right? Yeah.
So
And
Sandeep,
same. Yeah, Prashant, go
Sandeep,
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
have a question. Yeah. So Sandeep, if an application makes a call to API,
Correct.
it's for transferring the data in JSON format from the database to the application. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah. JSON is one way. It is
Okay.
not essential that it is JSON. So data can be transferred in any format. It can be JSON, it can be XML, it can be plain text, anything. Like it's
Okay.
a SLA between your front end and back end. What front end wants, in which format it wants. It can be CSV, it can be plain text.
Okay.
But JSON is used heavily. It's ideally like earlier when web services and all started, XML was used heavily, but XML is more bulkier and JSON is very lightweight. So people kind of switch to JSON, and JSON is widely adopted in industry for projects.
The
Okay.
CSV is more lightweight, right? Because nothing is there as a, like.
Yeah, that is true, but CSV does not have a tree structure. If you want to have correlation also. So if you want to say, like I have in Mentorpic terms, if I say I have courses have classes, each class has problems. That hierarchy, that tree hierarchy, JSON and XML are much better at displaying the tree hierarchy.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that is the reason they are used. Yeah. Any more questions, guys, here? Okay. So the next assignment that we are going to do, what our case also will become like is this. We will have one server with the two components. In fact, I'll say three components. Web server will be running here.
So
API
Sandeep,
component. Sure.
I have a question. So sorry to
Sure,
interrupt.
sure. Go ahead.
Sandeep, so for example, assuming I have a right now I'm doing some C++ app. Okay. So
Yeah,
that C+ app will have couple of REST interfaces open, right?
correct.
As per whatever business logic I'm working on. So
Correct.
is it safe to say that I can use a Node.js based app and I can test the REST APIs and the REST interfaces and the REST functionality part? Can I
For
use
a C++
this thing?
project, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
So
essentially,
these end.
okay.
Yeah. So if I got your question correct, so you are saying if somebody makes a call to some API here, I have to
Yes.
send some response back. Inside this JSON response, can I run an executable, C++ executable, get the response from that and send to the front end? Is that what you're asking?
No. What I'm saying is, for example, this is your Express web server. So
Correct.
this Express web server is based on Node. So essentially, it has this REST.json
Correct.
interface. This is for making the RESTful API calls. So essentially, if I have another application running separately in another machine, possibly,
Okay.
can I use this Node.js app to test the RESTful functionality of the C++ app?
Yeah, you can do that. But ideally, two things like to understand. REST.json
Okay.
is a function.
Okay.
Request is what front end sends you. Response is what you want to send back. So you are sending
Yes.
back a JSON, and JSON is nothing
Exactly.
but it is a structure like you put things like this, and it's just a key value pair. So
Key value. Yes.
value. And then some keys
Yes.
can be complex also. You can say my key one is not a simple string. It's again an object which has its own key value pairs.
Right. This is the tree structure you're
So
talking
this is the tree structure I'm talking about. Like here it can be like if this is overall person, so I can say his name, let's say being 0. Address wise, you can say address is a complex thing. It will have a city, let's say Hyderabad. Then it will have a state.
Right.
Telangana. And then I can have something more, like what is the age? Yeah, this will be the structure, right? So this is a JSON for me. Now, res.json, when you use, it simply says, hey, give me a JSON. JSON is nothing but the structure that I will be able to
Yes.
send to the browser. So this JSON you need, in your case, you are talking about you have a C++ project running on your server.
Yes. Yes.
That is running as a separate process, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you need some sort of mechanism for this node process to talk to that C++ project and get the response in JSON, and then you can send it back.
Oh, okay.
Right? So in your case,
Yeah.
you are saying Express. What Express is doing is Express is helping you your data from front end to land up here. So front end data is landing up here. Express is giving you that entry point.
Yes.
Behind that, how you want to process and produce is up to totally in your control.
Okay.
So that is what I was saying. Node.js also provides you functions from here. Before making a JSON call, ideally, there is an elaborate way of writing this. You can call it a function. So this is, earlier what we were seeing was a shorthand way. So this is how typically Node.js things work, that there is a function that gets called whenever any API call comes. So this function is actually running. This function is sending now response.json. So here, Node.js provides you a way. You can say spawn C++ process,
Right. Right.
get its output, send that output back using res.json. This you can do,
Got it.
right? So
Yes.
only different thing now that is happening is earlier we used to run exes locally. Now we say you want to run this exe by invoking it from a front end. That's where we say this is API. So front end
Yeah.
comes here. From here, if you can expose your API exe somehow, so entry point has changed, your functionality is still same.
Yeah. I got the gist.
Yeah. Okay. So eventually in our case also, we are going to do like this. Whatever project I'm showing you right now, if I run this, eventually what we want to make it is localhost 3000. Our next assignment that we are going to focus on is right now these login logout are just dummy. This backend doesn't have anything right now, if you ask me. So what we want to do, okay, let me go manually to /login because I have to fix all the things. Yeah. Here, when somebody types a username test and test, the moment we click login, what should actually happen is front end JavaScript code should make a API call, not a web server call. This login button should actually make an API call to this API server to do login. So that means we need to have our login REST API created. If that returns success back, we should take the person to the dashboard page, index page. And if that returns a failure, we should show some error here itself. Rather than welcome back, we should show some alert and say, hey, you have provided invalid username and password. Then we will say our front end has started communicating with the back end.
So again, a very newbie question, but so in case, so since this is authentication, we will just return success or failure. We can choose to return that data. We can choose to return the data along with success or failure, or we can choose to do that locally.
No, you can choose to return anything from the backend. So ideally, when you write authentication API in the backend, you can return back multiple things. A message, You can also return back who is the user now who got logged in. You can fetch it from the database ideally. If we gave email ID and password, username, ideally here what we are displaying, I think in login button also I need to fix index.html. So what I'll do is I'll go here and say index.html wherever it is in href. href is equal to this. It is at a lot of places. So I'm just going to replace that blindly with /index. Right. So all these calls I just want to replace with my express calls. Yeah. So now front end will start making those requests. So refresh. Now if I click login, oh, it should not be index. My bad. For index, or what I can do is in my server code, I can go and put an index API also. So this and /index. All these should be returning in index.html. So I have just defined one more route. So I don't have to change anything there. Node server.js. Now if I refresh it, so my index is also working. So now if I go here and say login, login will directly take me to this page. So what essentially we were saying is that here we are showing the name of the user. So this is a username that backend can send us and we can start displaying. Right. So short answer to your question is from backend, if you want to send more data, you can. Up to you. There is no limit on the data that you can send from there. Make sense, guys? Okay. So then
So
let's
Sandeep,
proceed.
this
Yeah.
Express web server is using HTTP1, HTTP2. It's all taken care in the package, right? Because I am supposed to take care of it in my CPP app. So because for example, in the CPP app that I'm working on, I have downloaded this ng HTTP2
Okay.
as
Yeah.
So Express doesn't have all these problems, huh?
Yeah, Express is actually written with that in mind, that in Node.js, if you want to write a web application, in fact, all that code that you are using in CPP, that is embedded in that Express, and they made it available as a ready to use module or library, you can say.
So I don't need to worry about the typical HTTP problems. Like, for example, right now, right now the application of which I'm dealing with stream IDs, HTTP to head of the line blocking. Because a typical REST-based API, REST-based interface I'm designing, and I have to take care of these problems. But in Node,
Yeah.
you don't have to take care of these problems.
Yeah, if you're using Express, you don't have to worry about those problems.
But how head of the line blocking will be handled? Because this is an actual question that came to me from a client. How are you taking care of HOL blocking? Or because I told him we are using HTTP2, which uses TCP as the transport. So he asked me, how are you taking care of this? What should be the answer
Blocking,
for this?
can you repeat your question? What are you going to block?
The head of the line blocking in TCP stack, which is used by HTTP2.
No, I did not get
HOL, head of the
Okay.
line blocking. So typical TCP stack behavior, where if you don't get an acknowledgement for a particular TCP segment, the remaining data segments are, so all the numbers which are greater than that, they also will be resent. So essentially, till the time you don't get an acknowledgement for a particular data segment, the further packets won't be sent. So all the packets will be blocked.
You're talking about TCP or you're talking about HTTP, Rishabh?
TCP, because I'm using HTTP. So he asked me, how are you taking care of this part, since you will be sending a lot of JSON data over the RESTful interfaces?
Okay. No, so this is Express works at HTTP layer, application layer, not at the IP layer. Like transport layer, it doesn't work at. So TCP thing
Yeah.
that you are talking about, that's a layer below it. And here
Right. So
it's a
that
layer
problem
above.
will be, there in Express also.
No,
If it uses JSON.
in Express, when you are sending some data in parts, right? At HTTP layer, when you are sending it in parts, it takes care of, like HTTP protocol takes care of retrying from the front end. All that thing is built in an HTTP layer. So there is something called, like in Express, when you upload a file, it is called multi-part. So Upload of file doesn't
Okay.
happen with one message. Express provides you that functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So it handles all that internally.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So fine. Now we have, can we say like we have a kind of working template prototype that we want to bundle as a Docker image. Yeah. So Ranga, can you tell me what should we do so that we can create a Docker image from this locally for now?
This Docker build -t with the Docker file actually.
Yeah. First, we
That's
should
all.
have a Docker file added to this project. So that's what I'll do. I go here and I'll say just go say Docker file, right? And in this Docker file, we need we need a Node.js image, right? So what I can do is I can go with hello ASDI because we have a sample Docker file present there. Okay, hello ASDI. Yeah, let me pick this. So we are picking a node image. Let's bundle this here. So node image taken, we are making a directory for container. We'll make that working directory. We'll copy everything from here inside that thing. We'll do npm install because our package.json knows that we need express. So npm install will take care of installing all the dependencies, and then we are running node server.js. So this one Docker file should help us run our, create a container, create an image for us, right? Then I had put these commands here in README. Once I have created Docker file, I can run this command. So first we will run like docker build -t. -t is to tag. Let's say this is front-end auth. I just name my image as front-end auth and I say build current directory. Oh, yeah, there is a problem on my laptop. I don't have Docker installed because this is a addition of Windows on which Docker doesn't work. So what I'll have to do, I'll have to follow these steps in my EC2 instance. So what I can do here is git status. Let me add all these files to git add -a. I'm just pushing it to GitHub and then I'll pick it into EC2 instance. Yeah, so done. Then I say git status. A lot of files to upload. Git commit -m, adding placeholder UI. And then I say git push. And all these files will go up to my Git repository. And what I'll do is I'll pick my Git repo from here to the Docker, to the EC2. So let me just see all my data has come here or not. Yeah, so all files are committed. So I'll go to EC2 instance. Okay, now this has timed out. So here I have a bat file created so that I can log into my EC2 instance. Git repos, I can say git clone this repo. Then I can go to my rest auth. Yeah, here I can say docker build -t, and this, so I was saying front-end auth UI and dot. So this will kind of create the image for us. So our image is created. If I say docker images, I can see one more image would have been created with that name. Where is that? Okay, here I need to just bring the font a little down so that I can see things clearly. Font, let me make it smaller, 20. Yeah, so here I see on top there is an image front-end auth UI. So I have my image created at this place. Now here is the next step that you wanted, right, Ranga? You wanted it to be put to Docker Hub. So I'll go to my Docker Hub. And I'll create a repo here. I'll say auth front end. I have created a repo. Let's say front end code for REST auth API. And I say create. That is the first step I talked about, that you need a repo where you can actually push your image that you have created. Now, when I tag my image, I have to use this name to tag it. So I'm just copying this part. Now I can go back here. I can do the docker build command once again, but this time what I'll do, I'll use that -t. I'll use whatever I have put in my repo. So docker build -t being 0 is my username on Docker Hub, and I can give any tag here. I can say this is my version 0.1. Now if I try to first build it, okay, I have to give dot for current directory. So this is docker build -t tag name and which directory you are building. Now if I hit run, so I have created an image with this name. Now this is the image I want to push to my Docker Hub. So second command that we run is, again, I'll go to the README file of ASDI. Yeah. Second command is I'll say docker push my image name with tag. That's it. So I can go and say docker push this local image I want to push online. In my case, I believe I have done docker. No, I have not done. So it says request to this resource is denied. So I'm hitting that error that probably you would have hit, Ranga. Now I'll say docker login. And now it is asking me the username and password. So now I will give my username and password for Docker Hub so that I can push here. So I'll say being 0. I don't know whether I remember the password correctly. I think wrong password. Docker login being 0. I'm trying 2-3 passwords. So ideally, if I get the right password, it will get going. So I'll have to check my password somewhere else. So I'll just pause the screen for a moment. Because as I said, like I rely a lot on my browser to remember the passwords for me. So let me do that. Yeah, so I got my password now. So I'll say this being 0. Yeah, so now I have entered the right password. And if you see, it says login succeeded. Now I am ready to push. So if I go and say push, now if you see, it started uploading the image to my Docker Hub. And by the time it is done, this image will kind of be ready to use from here. So just wait for this to complete. Yeah, so this is the whole process, Ranga. Hope that answers your question now.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, so these were the 2 steps that ideally were required, and I think we did not talk about the detail of that. But good that you tried. And
So, yeah, yes, sir. Like I think one more thing which I am facing is the current ISP which I am connected to, like the Docker, the DNS is not pretty fast enough, so it's giving a timeout. So I'll have to try it once again.
okay, the easy way is, Ranga, you can do the same thing that I did. You have an EC2 instance set up for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So from EC2 instance,
Yeah, I
you
think
can
that
directly.
yeah, that will fix the issue. Yes.
Correct.
I'll do
So,
that.
yeah, and if you want, like I can put these. Ideally, you have linked to these commands in Hello ASDI with which we started, but I'll still put
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, for
I
reference.
memorized all of them. Like yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Yeah. Okay, so this answers your question. And now we see like we have an image all set. Then now it's all a matter of, I could have kind of given you now this image and say like, go and run it in your EC2 instance. So you will have a basic front end running, which doesn't have any backend right now. Right? Now, if I ask you guys, what kind of API you will design for auth? When we talk about in interview, this also becomes a question like, what sort of API are you going to design? At least here we have a UI setup that we know like what UI will look like. So if I go to my login page, okay, I think I stopped that here. Let me come out of my EC2 instance, then go to that REST auth service assignment. Yeah, node server.js up and running. Now front end, ideally if you see, it will send an email address and it will send a password back to an API. When we click login, hit login, it should make an API call to the backend. And backend should send some sort of authenticated response that, hey, you are authenticated. So if I ask you a question like, use your normal procedural language thinking, what kind of function will you write? Can you tell me?
It'll like take some parameters and give out a response.
Correct. So here, what are the parameters?
Email address and password. So that will be first sent, and then that will be the next function should be to check it against any database or Active Directory, which will verify if it is a valid user or not.
That's right. And what kind of response you will send back?
So response will be, I think, if it is found, probably a success response, and just exam to the login.
So let me call it a string. So that string is very generic. We can send any string back, right?
Yeah.
This is the normal thinking that we need. If we were just doing a single machine authentication system, not a distributed, not a front end, back end, we would have said, hey, this is like auth manager class, which has a login function. Anybody calls this function, and we will be able to send you a response back, right? For registration, I don't know what it is asking for registration. If I go and say create an account, okay, again, boss, I have to fix these things. Let me go back. Yeah, here for register, I think this I fixed, but I did not replace register.html. If I search, what is that called? Register.html is the thing, and there'll be no slash here. If I search, it will be multiple places. I'll just change that with register. It's a multi-find replace that I'm doing. Replace all. Yeah. So now, if I go back, refresh it. Now, if somebody says register, ideally we are asking for first name, last name. We are asking for email address. We are asking for password and repeat password. And then we will go and register. So here, if I have to create a registration function, I'll say string first name, string last name, string, let me say, what else was there? You remember? Email, password, repeat password. So here, repeat password, I'll not ask in the backend. Here I'll ask for email address, and here I'll ask for password. That's it. Repeat password, I will let front end deal with it, because password, repeat password, front end will validate. If both of them are same, only then we will make a backend call. Otherwise, we will reject it at front end only. Front end JavaScript is capable enough to compare his two password and say if they are not matching. We don't want to burden server with that thing. This is clear, guys?
So these functions are just, I mean, what you're passing it to the as part of the REST API, right? So where are the functions which will return the response?
Yeah. No, right now, if you see, this is I have just gone procedural. In normal procedural way, we go typically in this route, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I have to go REST route, what I will do is I'll define some REST APIs, and REST API, when we define, we have to take care of term. We say, what is your verb? What is your endpoint? What is your input format? And what is the output you are going to give? These things we define little differently. Ideally, it's the same thing only. These two APIs we need. But how we define is verb-wise. Whenever we send some data from front end to back end, we will use HTTP verb as post, because HTTP gives us 6 methods. That is what we talked about. It has get, post, put, patch, delete. And there was one more. No, we use only these 5. So endpoint wise, we will say API auth, let's say we call it login. So something that uniquely identifies what we want to achieve. And now input that we will define input in terms of JSON, not in terms of this function. So here we will send input like email address should come to us and password should come to us. So we are saying this is our API specification. Anybody who wants to use this API should send us this message. If he doesn't send, like, we'll have some validation built in our layer. And if you see, these are the rules we are defining, we are setting, and totally in our control what we want to do. Output wise, we will say that we will pass a result. This will be true or false. True means his authentication is successful, false means unsuccessful. Second thing we will send him is, we will send him user name also, which is name of the full name of the user, so that front end can display that. And third thing we will send him is a token. I'm putting the token right now. Token is something, this is once we authenticate a user, we give front end some token. We say next time if you want to make a call to us, just pass that token to us so that we can treat you as a signed in user. So this is the format we are defining. Here, whatever we had written as a string, here we will send as the data. Now front end should be smart enough to see if result is false, front end will say that login has failed. If result is true, front end will make a decision that login has succeeded. Is this making sense?
Sandeep, I have a question about endpoint.
Yeah, sure.
I understand the verb part. Input output is also fine. What is this like? I see endpoint essentially probably could mean IP address, port, or a DNS or FQDN. What is this
So
slash for?
Yeah, Rishabh, endpoint is our server will be running on some server and some server port, right?
Yes.
Endpoint is something that starts after this. So we are saying if somebody wants to call, like the fixed part we are leaving totally as it is. We don't worry about the fixed part. We say if somebody
Okay.
wants to make an API call, if my site is running at, see, right now endpoint is here, endpoint is register. So for API, what I'm doing essentially is I'm saying all API calls, I'll prefix them with API so that with URL I can identify that they are API calls.
Okay.
I can also say API login. Auth is not
Okay.
required. Ideally, I put that as a additional thing that it is auth related API. Ideally, we can segregate. Auth related APIs can go to this. Then let's say homepage or any, if you have any specific thing, dashboard related APIs can go somewhere else. Admin related APIs can go somewhere else.
Okay. Makes sense, sir.
Same way, I'll say register, and register will take different parameters as we discussed earlier. So what I'm trying to show you is that there is one-to-one mapping with whatever we used to do with procedural languages and what we are doing with APIs, web APIs. These are the functions we will call over HTTP. These are the functions we used to call locally by creating a code which compiles along with auth manager code, and it knows that it has to make function calls. Now we are ideally, if you see, we are decoupling. Front end is on a separate machine, backend is on a separate machine. We are making them providing them a ability to talk to each other. And in order to give them that ability, we have to define some rules, some protocol, some set of guidelines. And that guideline is nothing but REST API is a sort of a guideline. If you want to design APIs, so just go with verb, define an endpoint which is unique, define input, output, and define an exchange policy.
So Sandeep, this looks like a normal IPC mechanism, right? Like you can have probably two threads or processes running within the same system. Why is it called REST essentially?
Okay, good. IPC is inter-process communication which happens between two processes on the same machine, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can use the same thing for like a custom IPC for two processes running on two different machines also, right?
Yeah, that is called RPC, not IPC, remote procedural calls.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
RPC is also a mechanism.
Okay.
So when you do RPC calls, Rishabh, you have to deal with again the making connection, breaking connection, all that you have to deal with yourself. So you still work at sockets layer, transport layer.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
So you have to take care of a lot of things yourself. But
Yes.
HTTP layer is more streamlined layer. It's application layer. It has things well defined. It has retry mechanism. It is more robust. You have to write less code. So REST API is nothing but it says you can leverage the HTTP protocol and the verbs that it has defined already, and we can make use of them to kind of write our APIs in an elegant way with lesser code, with more robustness. The rest is just a guideline. It doesn't say that this is the only way. RPC is something that that was in use before REST came into picture. Even now, a lot of open source libraries use RPC.
So when we hit this first endpoint, right? So our call goes to the class authorization manager and it invokes the function for login, right? And then that function will return a response back in JSON. And
when you hit that thing, your response lands up here in in Express. So what I'll do is I'll just create those endpoints here. Let me go here. Now we are making a post call. So it's Express gives you ability to do post. I'll say login. And same way, let me call it register, right? This is clear. We are doing two things. And let me also define the thing that we are returning back. So here, rather than returning this thing, since we have defined a rule, I'll return this particular thing. And here also I'll return this particular thing. This makes sense? And I'm API hello. Let me keep that as is. So any functionality that I want to expose separately, I'll create a new endpoint for that. And here we have created login and register endpoints for us. So Rishabh was asking that question, right?
Yes, Sandeep. I think yeah. Actually, I was confused with this the acronym, right? It's called representational state transfer. I always, while designing these type of API, I always get confused what type of state transfer I'm doing. So, just wanted to clarify on that.
Okay. So representational, state transfer is it says that whenever HTTP is a stateless protocol. I mean, when you make one call, it doesn't remember what happened on the previous call, right? So state is something that we have to build. So representational state transfer is like whatever state you want to transfer, just have that state defined and just keep transferring that with every API call. And it has some set of rules also. So REST was actually somebody's PhD thesis. He says we can build web APIs in an elegant way if you follow these rules. So this was that person's research. And he defined that as a standard. It was adopted, and in industry, people started using it. So REST specification RFC5C. RFC. So this is that standard. If you, I guess, know this. Yeah, this is the one, which actually in detail talks about what endpoints are, what representation is, and what it means. So ideally, again, this is a full detailed thing. When should you use verb? What error code you should return? We will talk about these when we kind of go in full-fledged REST designing mode.
Okay.
But this is the specification that actually defines certain rules. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just using a simplistic way of defining my APIs, not using all of his rules that he said we should be using. So what we try to do, I'm trying to.
So then,
Yeah, go ahead.
what I see is that you are mostly defining the REST APIs very, you're keeping the REST API definition very close to procedural. Is this like a tip to design the REST APIs? Like you
No,
write
this
it
is not the tip.
and then you convert
No,
it to a REST API.
no, this is not the tip. This is for your understanding. I'm taking it that way because we are more used to this notation. I'm saying just try to convert that notation into this so that you develop a product that the REST API does for you.
Okay.
Internally, what I'll do is I'll say, once the API has landed onto your server, once it has landed here, from here, can I say I can create object of my, what was that class that I named? Auth manager class, right? I can create object of auth manager AMGR is equal to new AMGR, and then I can simply say AMGR dot login. I pass these parameters that I get from the front end. So what I was trying to tell you is that your existing code that you have, existing library that you have, that can be linked here. So REST brings your front end to back end, and from back end, your business layer that you write, this is your business layer, that can stay intact. That is something, that low level design is something that you can keep doing the way you do as of today. This relationship is something that will happen if you have that layer designed separately. REST is just giving you an entry point here. That is just that you are able to create an entry point to all your function in business layer to this layer through REST. That is the way to visualize it.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is REST gives me a way to log in. REST gives me a entry point to my business logic through the backend module.
That's right. Absolutely. That should be the takeaway for now. Yes.
Okay.
Sandeep, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say I want to run a machine learning model which classifies, let's say, between images of cats and dogs. So this machine learning model might sit in the business layer, right? Is that the right location here? Okay,
Absolutely.
and the REST API can take an image from a user from the front end, and it can invoke the machine learning model from the back end.
That's right.
But then the machine learning model may have several dependencies, right? So it might depend on other libraries and so on. So will the Docker image be able to somehow encode the information about the dependencies in my business layer? When we build the Docker image, will that be encoded in the Docker or no?
So if you are talking about like your logic for processing the image,
yes,
if that has a dependency, this Docker file is something that you create, right?
Right.
So let's say you want some pip module to be installed, some Python module to be installed, right?
Yeah.
This Docker file gives you this run command option. So you can say run pip install abc. Now if I do this much, and ideally like this is not image, so I don't have Python installed, so I should also do run apk add Python. I believe that's the command here. So based on which image we are picking, we should see like how do we install Python there. So ideally, if you see, this will install Python and a module ABC, then it will install npm install, then it will do node server. So all the dependencies I can easily bundle in my Docker file. Docker file is extensible. It says put all your things here, and image is created out of this script. Right?
Okay. Okay.
Then you're
Thanks.
all set. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So coming back to this discussion, so this we understood, right? REST API is nothing that it simply says how should you design your APIs. That's the guideline REST API is giving. Plus, it also kind of emphasizes that if you use HTTP built-in protocol and its verbs, ideally that REST specification never tied itself to kind of one protocol. It is generic. But it has emphasized HTTP as an example, that if you stick to HTTP as a protocol, it gave a guideline, stick to get, post, put, patch, delete. Usually get for returning the data, post for creating the data, saving the data onto the server, and doing some processing also. Post is used there. Put and patch is for edit purpose, delete is for removing something from the database. This is just the simple that guideline says to us. So the moment we have come up with this line, if we have followed all the rules of REST APIs, we'll say, hey, we have a REST API ready. REST API is just an entry point for you. How you are doing processing, it's still your piece of ownership, your piece of game. REST does not dictate anything on that. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So now, if we follow this rule, we have to worry about two more things in our example. And those two more things are, let me get rid of this. Right now, I'll just create a simple API. What I'll do is I'll say if we are taking in login, what is it that we were passing? Email and password, right? As per our UI, we know we are taking email address and password. So these are two things that are going to come from the UI. So I'm just writing hard-coded API so that we can focus on the API part. We'll say if email address and password are these, admin@being0.in and password is admin, then we will return success, otherwise we will return failure. So this is a simple experiment that we are doing, and see, like, can we write our API or not. Once this starts working, we know that rather than hard-coded checking, we will make a database call, we'll get the data from there, get it validated, and then we will return the response. So that linking we can always do later. So key questions for us are, the questions are these: how do we get data from API call here, the front end data, and how do we send our response back? These are the two things to figure out. Response we have already figured out, this is how we will send. Getting the data from front end is something that we still need to worry about. So this REQ that we have, keep these two parameters in mind. REQ contains everything that we are getting from the front end. RES is used for sending anything back to the front end. So this is actually response. This is actually request. So we need to read documents of Express to know, hey, Express, how do I get parameters from the request? Second thing, as I discussed earlier also, we will be using curl, which is a command line tool, to make these calls to these APIs. So that is something that we will do. So first, if we want through Express, if we want request parameters, ideally Express makes it easy for us to get those parameters. So Express has a capability that it can fill all the data in request.body. But in order to do that, we have to use one more module, one more library, you can say, of Node.js that can help us get the data. So I'll quickly go and search for Express body parser. The purpose of body parser is whatever data comes from the front end, we just need to get here in the request. So I'll go and run this one more module, npm install body parser -- save. People who would have done servlet programming in Java, they would know like how the front end parameters come to their servlet. If you are coding in C#, you know how your ASP.NET parameters land up from front end here. So idea is same everywhere. Like somehow you need a way to get the data from front end to here. So in Express world, we say we use body parser. Purpose of body parser is whatever comes from the front end, it parses that and makes that available to you through request.body. As simple as that. Once we have done npm install, we have to use this line. So let me put that here. I'm using body parser, and you have to configure your Express to use this body parser. I'll say app.use. There are 2 lines of code that we write. And we tell in Express, all these use terms are used to configure Express. Earlier we said to Express use this for static folder. Now we are saying use body parser. Right now, let's not go into the meaning of these 2 lines, but for now, like just see if you are putting these 2 lines, it will make all the front end passed parameters to you in the request.body. That's the purpose of this. So with these 3 lines up, these 2 and require body parser, what we will be able to do is we will be able to get request.body here. So if I say console.log and I just want to paste, I just want to print JSON.stringify. So it can print any JSON request.body. I'll just print the body and show you that are we getting the parameter here or not. Once we get the parameter, we will deal with it. So request.body now will be filled because of that. So I go here, say node server.js. So 3000 port, we started listening. I open another command prompt. I say curl -h. I have to pass a header. So 3 things I have to do. I have to tell this is a post call. I have to tell a header. Content type is application/JSON. This is the content type I'm sending. -d will send my data. So -d. Now my data that I'm sending from front end is, we have defined that in another call here. Yeah. So we said front end will send data in this format, email address, password. So let me create that data. Email address in double quotes. I'll say admin at being0.in. Password, I'll say, let's say this is admin. So I'm sending this data and I'll put that over here. So this is the data the curl allows me to send with -d option. After doing these 2 things, we just give the URL. So our URL is http localhost 3000. This is the base URL. Endpoint we defined was API login. Let me cross validate. Is that the thing that we gave? API login is our endpoint. So the moment I hit enter, it could not resolve being0.in. Wait, why did it go to email address, admin, password? Okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. -d is for this data. Content type is application/JSON. Why it is resolving this host? Just a moment. If I get rid of this for now, result is true. Okay, I don't know why it is resolving that. We will fix that. But right now, if you see, I have just removed the data right now. I have made a call to our API to this endpoint. It is going there. It is returning result true. Username is nothing. Token is nothing. So ideally, that means call landed here. Request.body had nothing. So request.body's output will be wherever our server was running. Our server was running here. In server, we hit some error earlier. Here request.body, it is printing empty because right now we did not send any data, but we are able to land up there. Let me run the server again. So our API is landing up here, printing blank data and then sending the response back. So once again, if I go here and try, so I'll just search for the way we send. Curl send application/JSON. I'll just get that syntax quickly. One post example we need. -x post. Yeah, so ideally content type. Yeah, this is the syntax, and I believe I used the correct way. Copy once again, I'll put that in the file, curl -h. Then we said -x post, and the command, let me get it once again, because that's the issue. When we are hitting, we have to follow it in an appropriate way. This is our URL, and the data that we were passing was, let me get the data also as an example. So -d, yeah, I've pasted some data. Let me hit with this one, and then we will try to just see. So my server is running, not running. So I node server.js. So this started running. I go here, paste this. Somehow it is shouting unmatched closing bracket. Do you see any closing bracket unmatched here? Let me give some space. No. Node jot server auth db server. Somewhere I would have documented also my API calls. Yeah, so I have this documented. Let me get that from there. So this call I'm making to API login. Yeah, let me try this once. My server is not running, so I'll say node. Okay, I'll run node mon. So if server goes wrong anywhere, it can restart easily. Let me right click and run that command once again. So this is the command. Let me run, copy, paste here. Could not resolve host Sandy. I don't know why it is treating that as a parameter in -d. Ideally, this should work as it is. Okay, without data, it is working fine. Anyways, command line is kind of causing a problem. I usually wanted to avoid Postman. This is a UI tool for making these calls. So in UI tool, if we go migration guide, no, close it. So I can simply make a request with the UI tool. Request name is login. What is this? Yeah. So let me go and hit my localhost /3000 API and call it login. So this is the API call we are making. Here it will be much simpler. Then I can say to headers, I'm saying content type. Okay, this also I don't need to specify. I can go to body directly and I can say raw. In raw, I can give email address as admin@being0.in. Let me hit this now. If I hit, you see that I'm getting a response back. Same way, if I give my password, admin. Now, if I say send, I'm still getting the response back. Now, if I go to my server and look at what it is printing, in server, we were printing our request.body. So ideally, if you see, this is something that server is printing as request.body. So this is the server log, and server log is coming from this one line of code that we had in server.js file. So our server.js file, this console.log that we had printed, this console.log is printing what it is getting from the front end. So ideally, yeah, these two lines are coming from that console.log. So we are able to send our data back to the backend here. Now here I can put a simple check if request.body.email address triple equals. So this uses triple equals if this is being 0.in, admin at being 0.in, and request.body.password triple equals is admin. Only then I want to return true. So if this is the case, return true. Otherwise, I can say else res.json result false. So this is how we have coded the server. Now let's try our postman request. So first I send the correct valid username password. Okay, did my server fail anywhere? Yeah, server was stuck. So now if you see, I have sent the correct username and password. I am getting true. If I change password to admin1 and say send, it should return false. So this is kind of a dummy REST API we have created. And when I use UI, I do not have to worry about curl command line parameters. It's simple, like go select which verb you are calling, give the right URL, go to body here, and whenever we send the JSON data here, we select raw, we give our JSON object. And when we put that, it automatically puts these headers. So header, okay, header it is putting as URL encoded. So I guess with this header, probably my curl command should also have worked. So sometimes I have seen it works with application JSON. Sometimes it starts failing and I have to figure out other resorts for doing that. So in nutshell, like in all this, if we want to summarize, what we have learned is we said like, if you have created endpoints like this, and if you are actually dealing with Express, then you have to follow a few steps. npm install body parser. This is first thing that we did. Second, we have to use 2-3 lines of code in our Express. And let me go back to our server.js. So 3 things that we did was, this is something we had put in code, and we used 3 lines of code we need to put in server.js. The first line was nothing but where body parser is equal to require body hyphen parser. Yeah, so this is what we did. And after that, in our request response, request.body has all input parameters. So this is in nutshell, the crux is if you want to build APIs, then this is how you can go and define your all the APIs. So any questions, guys, on this? I mean, at least idea and territory is clear to everyone.
Yes, Sandeep. It was very clear.
Okay. Yeah. So this is something that kind of allows us to take our discussions, our things to next level. And ideally, if we are comfortable visualizing the problem from this side, then it will be more fruitful for us to focus on the backend journey of scaling up our REST API server. And how do we kind of scale to more and more users? When database comes into the picture, then where do the bottlenecks come? How do we do the performance tuning of that? So all that is the journey. So this is right now we are still focusing on the side of the story that this diagram, this basic diagram is something that once we are able to see it functional, then we know that database will not be one server. In between machine will not be one server. So that is how we start scaling. So far, our API will talk to database, not web. Web will always talk to file server. File server for now, all our CSS, JS files, image files, we are storing on file server. So if you see current diagram with proper arrows, if I show you, these are the arrows. So these arrows, front end talking to web server, this is making a request and getting HTML, CSS, JS images back from this channel. JavaScript in the front end is making call to API, getting the data back. Web server is talking to file server and getting sending the data back here. API will actually go and connect to the DB, or maybe another layer in between DB and API. That layer we will call as business logic. So far, our business logic we are talking about, we have put in API layer only. Our API server itself is talking, and in our case, there is only one Express instance which is playing three roles: like web server, API server, and even the files are stored there. So high level diagram, if I say this is the high level diagram that right now we are visualizing, and this is where we want to go to by bringing one database also into the picture. And then we will say, like, at least we know how to create a web application that works on EC2 instance, and it will work for 100 users comfortably. If we are able to reach to that model, we will have a app running in Express instance which can cater to at least 100 users. Then our journey begins. How do you make it 1,000 users, 1 million users, 1 billion users? So that's what we will start understanding. Right, guys? So yeah, one more thing I'm going to, because in between there was a question, Prashant, you asked if you have a kind of scenario where your application that you are running, it's some sort of where you have to do machine learned models you have to run, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for that also there is some sort of diagram on this page that we had started with. I just want to show you that is taken care of. Wait. The diagram that we began our discussion with, it was there in that. Yeah, paste bin we talked about, right? Yeah, this one. Sync. And then it's the top diagram that we saw. Let me go to up. First diagram that this page shows is this probably. Yeah. Is this the first one? Or no, this is the first one. Yeah, so this is what Prashant it is showing, that if front end sends you some data, if you want to write something to the database, you will go to the write logic. It will go and directly write into the DB.
Yes.
Here or here, correct? But in your case, you said that you want to do some machine learned model you want to run on the input. So in that case, we go with async model. So you make a copy call here, because this processing is going to take some time for image classification.
Right.
This will put that in the queue because you cannot immediately respond back to that answer.
Yeah.
It puts in the queue and it assigns back an identifier to you. It says your request number is 7259. So this is some identifier, and you respond back to front end. Hey, front end, your request is being processed. This is your ID. You can ask me later that what is the status of this, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Now it is queued. You don't know when it will be picked. Workers are the processors running in the background, which pick the data from the queue and process it. And once the processing is done, they go and update the database. This thing is done. So 7259 status will be written by worker independently.
I see.
Now, whenever your front end comes back again, it makes polling. It makes a call to read API and says, hey, tell me the status of 7259. Read API goes to that replica and says it is completed, not completed. If it is in the queue, it will respond back, it is still in the queue, not processed. But if it is processed, it will say, hey, the data has been written and it is telling right now it is processing. And if it has processed, it will go back and say it is done. So this is the model that you will kind of follow.
Right.
Right.
Thanks, Sandeep. It's very clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandeep, I have another question here. So,
Sure.
So my experience with databases is very less. Mostly we work with in-memory data stores. So recently I was doing some design and I came across a problem where I am trying to update a particular user ID in a DB, and and the process which is going to be updating the user ID in the DB. We are trying to create it as a microservice. So there could be number of instances of that microservice reading from the DB and updating to the DB. Now that microservice will be interacting with multiple interfaces. It will have multiple interfaces, and those multiple interfaces can update the same entry.
Okay.
So I have a very basic doubt, like how will the database handle this? For example, if on one of the interfaces, I'm updating an entry, I'm modifying that particular entry, and the other interface is trying to get that entry, and it will have some logic based on that. Then how will that work? Like, will the other interface get the existing data, and then if there is a write lock on the database, how this works generally?
Yeah, so it depends.
I'm using
Rishabh,
I'm using a key value stored database, not a relational.
Okay. So now it depends, Rishabh, what is it that you are guaranteeing to your clients? If your guarantee to your client is consistency, then you will use some sort of design. If it is not, if strong consistency is not desired, it is called eventual consistency, that we will gradually reach there. So you can say, like, I do not, it doesn't matter if the data is current request, if it is served with old data also, that should be fine. So what is your requirement? Strong or weak consistency?
Okay, I haven't thought about this part, like from the consistency standpoint.
Yeah, imagine if I send you an email, right? Imagine we talk about Google. So I, as a person, I am sender. I sent an email. I go here. My email is written into this database. I mean, very naive way of looking at things, right? When I write an email to you, it will go and get stored somewhere in server's database. It has to be delivered.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes.
Now receiver, let's say receiver is using mobile phone. So what happens? Our mobile phones continuously poll the data. Mobile phones Gmail app is actually going to the server and asking, this is making a read call. Hey, give me any mails that has come for me.
Okay.
Imagine the mail came at, let's say, 20 seconds past 0. After 12 o'clock, 12:20, I sent out an email.
Okay.
This guy checked at 12:20 exactly, but my mail was sent at 12:20:04, and he is also checking at 12:20:04. My write is in progress right now when he's reading.
Yes.
He doesn't know there is an email. So that means my write proceeded, but his read is reading the old value. His client is telling no mail for you so far.
Okay.
After 2 minutes, when again his agent tries, that is there any email for me? Now it will say there is an email for you. That means he got his mail, not at consistent way, but after some time. Is that acceptable in email world?
Yeah.
Yep. So that is acceptable. So we are not looking for strong consistency in this particular case. So we don't care at all.
Yeah.
Right. So in this example, we say that even if we update little later, that should be fine. We don't guarantee that if it is being written, we are not blocking your reads and write. But at the same time, let's say if I deposit something at 12 o'clock in my bank account, and at 12:01 somebody queries back, you would want to guarantee that at 12:01 also I want to send the correct updated status, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So in this particular case, even if you have replicas here, because read calls are being served from another database, right?
Okay.
So your writes, you would want to make sure they are replicated immediately. So that is how you will guarantee that your reads are actually seeing your last updated value, even if it is happening within a fraction of seconds.
Okay. So now the only thing is, I don't really have an idea about whether these writes are that fast. Like within a minute, the data is synchronized across all the read replicas.
Yeah. So now see, this is the way we design things. We say, we are setting up this model, right?
Right.
Now, when you are designing for strong consistency, you say my write coming to this server, I go and say write successful. This is typically how we do, right?
Yes.
in weak consistency, we do this. But in strong consistency, we say write here, replicate here, then only say write completely.
Right, successful. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So now we are guaranteeing we don't say write succeeded until unless we have replicated also. So this is how we guarantee. In this case, certainly things will be slow. Your write API will be slower than the previous one because here you will wait for the replication also.
But Sandeep, till the time we are waiting for the write successful from the replica, what if there is a read call for the same data at the same time?
Yeah, now depends upon us. For banking system, we may error out that there is a write in progress. We tell the client, hey, there is some issue, please retry later.
So that will be generally typically provided in the databases, right? This should be typically provided in whatever database I'm trying to use. That if a write is in progress, you can give an error and you have to, and then the client automatically retries.
Yes, we can configure database in such a way that we say if there is a write happening, we can acquire some sort of lock that we are blocking write or reads during that interval.
Right. Okay.
Right. So then, yeah, it's in our control. So ideally, like, how do we design things so that user experience is good and we are not kind of leading the data to be in a bad state any moment of time. So this is all as a architect, as a developer, it's our responsibility to take care of those scenarios.
Yes, I'm clear.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So this is one more resource I will say, like, in your free time, just read it out because here a lot of information is available, which we will be going over in our course. But something that if you can read ahead of time, then you will be having like more clarity when we are discussing them. So CDN caching, client caching, this is a very elaborate resource. Whatever we are doing, we'll also start seeing small demos of that so that we are able to correlate what is happening. Like today, we discussed about REST APIs, that how it will land here, how it will eventually, how the link will be established to whatever code we write for database. So you will start visualizing things. It's not that we are just talking about theory, which you have to cram or verify or by heart, right? Okay, guys. So this is what I had for today. If you have any more questions, let me know. Yeah, Prashant, any questions from your side?
Not really, Sandeep. I just wanted to appreciate your time for clearing our doubts.
Sure, man, most welcome. This training is main target is people should benefit from this training. So yeah, from our side, we keep our share of honesty. You keep your share of honesty. Keep working on the assignments and make sure that you are making good use of your time and money that you are investing here.
Thanks, Sandeep. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, sure, most welcome. So
Thanks, Sandeep.
one more thing. Yeah, most welcome, Sayed. So one more thing I just want to point out to you is this, that question of the day, we are putting scores. So people who are responding to the question of the day, even if your response is duplicate, just do share it to us so that it gives us a fair idea of what you are thinking or where you are struggling with. So QOD two that we had put. So there are some scores we are assigning to your participation. REST API is something that design a placeholder REST API in the EC2 instance that you have put. Auth service is whatever we have discussed today. That's the assignment for auth service. So ideally, like, there will be scores for everything we are sending your way. So make sure you are not leaving it there. Most of the times I saw, I guess Prashant has updated his service. So one small exercise was that whatever things you are running, just try to customize it. So Prashant has changed its name to Prashant. So he knows where he went and made the changes. So now he will be able to correlate how things are working. So just start going a little deeper on things. So he has put these things. But I saw not everyone has done that. So if I go to Harish, it is still running the old template. Yeah, so you will learn more when you try things. So just devote some time to it and keep working on things. Right, guys? Okay, guys, then we'll stop here, and then let's meet over weekend class.